have spent the last year in Europe and have traveled to 10 different European countries. I couldn't help but notice that a lot less people were overweight compared to back home. And it got me wondering why. So here are 5 habits that I think set Europeans apart and keep them slimmer than Americans. Let's start with the obvious and talk about fast food and fast food chains. I think we lasted about a month before we looked for one. They were actually harder to find in some of the European countries that we traveled to, which made it less easily available to us. When we did actually find a McDonald's in France, we realized that the prices were a lot higher than what we're used to. The reason for that is that there are different regulations, and in France, McDonald's actually uses locally sourced ingredients, which are higher quality and actually healthier, which is pretty crazy. Of course, this varies country by country. For example, Montenegro or Albania didn't actually have McDonald's, whereas Bulgaria, Spain, and the UK actually offered cheaper prices than what we're used to back home. But for the same price, you could get a much healthier meal from a local restaurant, which often discourages us to have fast food. We also noticed that fast food was just in general less popular in Europe compared to America. I think Europeans still see it as an unhealthy option. And not only that, culture around food in Europe is a bit different. It's seen as much more of a social event. A lot of Europeans would actually prefer to sit down at a restaurant and enjoy their food while talking to friends and family rather than having a quick meal like we used to back home. If you're thinking about visiting Europe, I'll definitely say pack some good, comfortable walking shoes. European cities are much smaller than the ones we're used to in Canada and the US, which makes walking everywhere realistic. You could walk to the grocery store, you could walk to the beach, you could walk to a restaurant, and on top of that, a lot of the cities are built up on a hill, which actually adds an extra challenge. Which is why Europeans definitely walk more as part of their day-to-day activities, which I think helps them stay slim. With American cities being so much bigger, we often tend to drive everywhere, and at the end of the day, we worry about how we're going to get our steps in and try to go out for a walk or go to the gym. Let's talk about restaurant portions because I feel like that makes the biggest difference. In America, we always think that bigger is better. And we have bigger cars, bigger homes, we have bigger portions. When you go out to a restaurant, you can easily expect to eat anywhere from 1,000 to 1,500 calories, which for me is more than half of my daily calorie intake. I actually realized this for the first time when we traveled to the UK because a lot of places have calories listed on their menus, so I could make a much more informed and conscious decision about what I like to order. With portions being a lot more reasonable here in Europe, it's less likely to overeat and overindulge. So I already mentioned that Europeans see food as a social event. And I actually think that that really helps them stay slim because they eat a lot slower. In a lot of the countries we traveled to, dinner was served really late. We often couldn't find any restaurants open between 2 and maybe 6 or 7 p.m. Sometimes restaurants even opened at 9 p.m. And to our surprise, a lot of Europeans would come, sit down, and enjoy food for hours while we were always the first ones to leave. Last but not least, all food in the European Union is regulated by the European Food Safety Authority, which has much stricter regulations than the ones in America. Basically, only additives that are proved non-harmful can be approved for use in Europe. When you go to grocery stores, you often see this Nutri-Score on foods, which is super simple to understand. It's basically a rating of how healthy the item is. And it actually works because it definitely discouraged me from buying certain things. Europeans definitely like street markets. There are a lot of these across Europe, and they sell locally sourced fresh produce and locally sourced meat as well. These are seen as a much higher quality and healthier options. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you in the next one.